I find that it's like to practice something in crisis makes it even more difficult. To practice things when there's no crisis is the most opportune time, because when that crisis hits, you can like, oh, mama say, mama sama makusa, yo, help me. Like you can go right in. You know what I mean? I think
I
it's
think you
important.
raise a great point there because a lot of people will meditate as a stress release tool, and it is beneficial for that. Breath work, meditation is something that calms us, but then that's no different than having a drink, or I mean, it's a little different, right? But it is something also that's just meeting us in crisis mode. Whereas if you do it every day, who you are through the crisis is different, right? And I think that there are a lot of people that are meditating almost like instead of taking a Valium, instead of meditating so that they can float through that in a space of non-judgment and acceptance.
Oh, we've got a special guest today. Okay. When Brian and I were talking about bringing on guests, like we were very intentional about who we want to bring on and who we will continue to bring on, because of the messages that Brian and I committed to putting out through this podcast. It's more than black or white. And when we were talking about this, you were one of the people that came up because your experience is so vast. I see your heart is open. I see your spirit as curious, and you're always in to teach some lessons and share your experience.
Right.
So this brings in our topic for today, people. And this is going to be a great topic for you if you've had this experience where your life is nowhere where you thought it would be. You most likely think you're experiencing depression. I know for me it was suicidal thoughts like, I don't think I want to be here.
Mm.
Or you just think like everything I've done is absolutely false and wrong.
Yeah.
Has anyone felt like that on the panel?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is. Like,
Yo,
is anything real? Right. Yeah.
what? Yeah,
Yeah.
so you may be thinking like, what is this dude talking about? It's called the dark night of the soul. Okay. And when we were doing our remember, so Brian and I are always doing preps, right? We're like, yo, man, so and CA, you were in on the prep when we came to like what this is. So I want to check in, so it's not me all talking. I want to check in with you two. When you hear the words dark night of the soul, what does that bring up for you, and what's your experience? So see, I'm gonna start with you, then Brian, I'm gonna go to you, bud.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the first one that I went to was literally a moment. It came in the face of a death of a loved one that had me look at my life and go, whose life is this? Right? I realized that I was living the life that the world told me I was supposed to live, being the person that the world told me I was supposed to live. I was within my conditioned, patterns and behaviors and doing it really well, but not necessarily authentic or as the truest expression of myself, and certainly not connected to, intuition or anything outside the matrix, right? And once you have that view, you're like, nothing is real, right? I know you've talked about wearing masks before, right? It was like, this is the avatar. I've been living life as this avatar. Jim Carrey talks about that with depression. It's like you no longer want to wear this avatar, right? And I was like, I have no idea who I am. And certainly the people in my world don't know who I am. And I went through this, I have to change this. And literally, I quit my job that next week. I downsized my house. I was living in a new house a week later. I started selling jewelry and just like prioritizing, finding out and discovering who I was. And so the first journey that I went on after that first dark night of the soul, where it was like, this, I don't align with this life anymore. I can't live this way and be authentic, and willing to lose everything in order to be authentic. I would say the first journey was really one to discover the self and to become authentic and to be able to discover, well, what do I like? What do I want? Instead of always just doing the things I want to do, right? I would say recently I went through another one that was much, much different, but you still come to the place where you're like, this is not the life and the people and the things that are moving me towards my highest expression, and something's got to change. Something's got to change. And I think I was telling you on the prep call that I had seen something that said that it's actually not a dark night of the soul. What it is a shaking up and a breaking up of the ego, because you can no longer live in that your soul can no longer live in this physical expression or reality and express itself fully or fulfill purpose or be fully authentic. And so that's been in my experience both times. I didn't realize that you'd go through more than one, but we do. And that goes back to that thought of like never being the master, right? If you're always on this plane of expansion, you're going to come to places and hit places where you realize that the way that you're living isn't for the highest good. And it's so uncomfortable when you get there, right? I think that's important for people to know too, is like, you're going to hit it again. Because Paul, to your point, I went through a period of time, maybe a year and a half back, where I was like, I just don't want to live. It would be so much easier to not be here. And having not necessarily suicidal thoughts, but almost like
you want to go away.
it was more like fantasies about dying, right? Like it would be so much easier if I wasn't here. And I'm the observer of that going, what is this? But it was just like, this is too hard. I don't want to go through this again, right?
Right.
We do. Thank God, because we're here to then guide other people through. And that's one of the things I realized too. And I know we talked about this in the prep, is some of us, I think, are here because we chose to go through these for the collective, because we're sort of ahead of the curve, right? So it's like, all right, I've been through this and I'm shining the flashlight, like, come on, like you talked about divorce. Like I've been there. Okay, come on. You can skip this, you can skip that or whatever. And I do feel like there's some of us, those that came here to be healers, have chosen to go through these difficult things so that we can guide other people through them. And I feel like that happened the first time and it definitely happened again.
Oh man, so much there we're gonna come back to.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I just realized, Brian, before you guys realize how rude are we? Carol Ann, physical therapist, yoga teacher and practitioner, Reiki teacher, and a tuner. Anything else?
Anything else? I mean, all the things. I have an advanced certificate in mind body medicine, mindfulness coach, mentor. It's like I just show up in the space and say, how can I serve? I have this big toolbox that is half rooted in Western medicine science and then half rooted in all the woo-woo spiritual stuff. And so just showing up and saying, how can I serve? Right. And it takes me wherever it takes me with people. It's a gift. It's a gift to be able to meet people in so many different ways.
Bless up, man. Ain't we
Thank you.
Because we all got a toolbox. Bless up. Yeah. Let me. I'm curious. Dude, I want to hear like what the Dark Night of the Soul, like what comes up for you, and like what's your experience too with that, man.
Yeah. So I got a lot of my one of my biggest mentors was working with Paul Chek out there. I shouldn't say working with him, but I was studying under him going back in 2007, 2008. And I used to take his holistic lifestyle coaching courses, and all he did was like talk about spirituality, talk about, religion and how everyone's problems stems from religion. And his big thing was like, before you become religious, you should become spiritual. Then you can kind of have a better understanding of what religion is. So I dove a lot into spirituality, dove a lot into religion, try to understand people's where they're coming from and where they're. So my background is a little bit of, it was like a physical therapist type. So he said something that was always stuck with me. He goes, when somebody comes to you with back problems, is it a Christian back? Is it a Catholic back? Is it a Muslim back? So you got to deal with these kind of issues, and that's all the root problems. So he's like, if you really want to help these people out, learn more about religion and see what they're holding inside of them. So anyway, I started working with a lot of these Czech practitioners. And one guy one day, he's like, hey, have you dived into psychedelics ever? I was like, no, I was like, smoked a little weed here and there growing up, but like nothing like too crazy. He's like, we're going to do DMT with a bunch of people. We're flying in Czech's shaman. He's going to kind of run the whole thing. And I was like, well, what is it? He's like, it's going to rock your world. And of course, I'm like, all right, I'm in.
Yo, that was on the end tongue. You
Right.
But
good?
don't be wrong, I was nervous, right?
Wait,
Because I
how long
never.
ago was this? Because it's
This
pretty
was
like these psychedelics are much more common now. So how
yeah.
long?
This is 2011. I want to say I did this.
Right.
Oh
So you're way
shit.
ahead of the curve.
Yeah,
Oh,
Way ahead of the
yeah,
curve. Okay.
2010. Actually, probably 2010, 2011. I forgot
Right.
exactly when it was, but so
oh.
I was really nervous. So I went out. Of course, I'm like, all right, I want to prepare myself as best I can. So there's a book out there called DMT, the Spirit Molecule. It's probably like like a that thick, right? So I read the whole thing. I read it like twice, right? So I'm like, all right, I'm prepared. I know what I'm getting myself into, right? So I get out there and they're passing around all the DMT and everything like that. So I don't know if you're aware, but what it is basically, it only lasts about maybe like 8 to 12 minutes in your body. So you inhale and then you hold your breath. And everyone's like, before you do it, you're going to feel like you're going to die. Just go with it. Just prepare to die. Let go, let go, let go, let go. I'm like, yeah, yeah, okay, all right, cool. Whatever happens, happens. So I inhaled this DMT. Then all of a sudden I exhaled and I was like, boom, like shot off in space, right? Like I'm not even in my body anymore. And I'm just like, and I see this like silhouette of like a baby, like I guess me at birth, like in the womb. And I have all these like words like fear, hate, not good enough, insecure, and it's all coming up to the surface. And it's like the scariest thing. Like everything is coming up. Then all at the same time, right, it gets to the peak, and you're like, you basically think you're dead, and you just got to keep telling yourself, just go with it. If you die, it's okay, but you're not going to die. So I'm like, I get to the point, and all of a sudden, like it just releases out of me, and I felt like this overwhelming like love that I could never replicate again. And I kind of came out of it and I was like laughing because you just realize first of all, I probably lost about like 20% of the seriousness out of life. Like one of the main things I got out of it is like all your problems that you think you're going through every day, it's such bullshit. On the big scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. And I came out of it with just like a clean slate. And basically I like death of the ego. That's what the shaman was like, yeah, your ego just basically just died right there. And it was scary because if you can't identify your ego, it's like what's left. But it's just love that's left at that point. And it really changed my life because it's like I was like, there's more to the world that we don't know, more to your life that you don't know. And so ever since then, I've been going down like a little bit of a psychedelic, I've done ayahuasca, LSD, all this stuff, all for spiritual reasons and try to get growth out of it. And every time I go into something, I learn something about myself and I let go a little bit more of the ego every time, So that's my first experience and my probably only ego death experience. But
Yeah.
it was amazing for me. Yeah.
I love that you talked about love because it's what
Yes.
so many people in plant medicine journeys will talk about this, this sensation of love or being loved or oneness with all that is or the divine or having an experience of the divine, right? And that happens a lot of times even in Reiki session or something because we're connecting to the highest level of all that is and just asking to hold that space is a lot of times people will say they just feel loved,
Mm-hmm.
right? Isn't it? It's so fascinating. But I literally just did a session the other day where it was like a client who was going to see family in like there's a difficult situation with family and she's a yoga teacher as well and she's like all right how I just need to be grounded for this circumstance and what came through for her in session was like look you know what it's like in yoga and you were talking to this before like teach to the lowest level first right it's like you don't teach the full expression of the pose necessarily you teach kind of a mid pose or a base level pose and then you invite them and if it's available to you you can add this and it feels good in your body you can add this right working towards the full expression so what they said to her and this was so beautiful they said listen the full expression is love just
Mm.
go be love and invite people to come in at whatever their expression of that is and let them be them and you be love. And I thought that was so beautiful because it really is when we return to the truth of who we are, it's love, it's
Mm-hmm.
oneness, but not all of us are there. We have these egos, like you said, or this paradigm. And to the degree to which you've done work, maybe your expression of love is a little bit greater, or you can hold it longer, you can hold it in more circumstances. But I love that comparing it to being a yoga teacher. Like, yeah, I know the full expression, but you might be in child's pose and you might be in down dog and you might be doing this, and that's all cool. You know what I mean? The
Right.
full expression is love. I thought that was so beautiful.
So this is interesting, because you both, in hearing your stories, I heard for both of you, it was a scary experience at first, right? This dark night of the soul, this experience of separation, right? Like,
Mm.
um, there was, like, Carolyn, see, you talked about like the ego, like separation from the ego and recognizing what's on the other side. B, you talked about like, you were out, you were out in the stratosphere, man. Like, you separated from your body, quote, or the ego, and then you saw, like, you really had this observer mind or this observer space to see what was happening. Then there was love on the other side.
Yeah.
I'm curious your thoughts, because there's going to be people that are watching this that may be going through a tough freaking time in life.
Mm.
And so the question I have is, like, when we talk about this ego and then love being the other way, do you think that something like the dark night of the soul, or that experience of like the depressive state and things of that nature, do you think it's because people have yet to know what love is, so it's scary? Or do you think it's just they have to go and separate from ego, which eventually, like what I heard you both say, is love? You
You want
follow
to
Mm.
go
this?
first, or do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think everyone is born with it, born with love.
Yeah.
That they unconditional love. I think there's a big difference between love and unconditional love.
Mm,
You
mm,
know, where love has boundaries, like I love you as long as you know, do this and do that. Where I
yeah.
think everyone is born unconditionally love, and
Yeah.
then you just kind of go through your first, the first chakra gets kind of cultivated, for the first like 7 or 8 years, and then it starts becoming conditioned love.
Yeah.
And I think as you start going down, I mean, we're living in a society nowadays where everything is so polarized. You have to either be black or white. It has to be either Democrat or Republican. It has to be either be X or Y, whatever it is. And there's nothing in the gray area. We're always trying to be separated by either social media, linear education, or just the tribe that we kind of grew up in. And
Right.
I think that's not what our psyche is supposed to be. And I think that's what starts cultivating the dark night of the soul, is having a crisis of the psyche. So your body's like, your soul's like, all right, you're not going in the right direction. We're gonna create a crisis for you, so we can put you kind of back on track.
Mhm.
Ooh.
And
That
that's a really good point, because your soul creates what's necessary to put you on the soul aligned path. It's happening for you, it's for your highest good, but it doesn't seem that way. It seems like everything you believe to be true is falling apart. But it's important to remember that it is your higher self, your soul, that is creating a scenario that reroutes you. And
Mm-hmm.
that was a really good point, because I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just a good point because I agree with it. That was a weird statement.
Oh, it can be. It's all
I
good.
like that
Go ahead,
point,
man.
and I agree with it. It's not good because I agree with it.
yeah,
No, it's well, it's. I think this is. I love these conversations, being. I love what you said, especially about the conditioned love and unconditional love. And it's
mm,
funny because I was talking to my boss at work about this today. He was just like, I forget how he approached it, but he was like, the world needs more love. I was like, well, actually, the world gets to stop teaching hate.
Mm.
And he was like, yeah, we are taught that. And I was like, yeah, we're born unconditional love. And see what you were bringing in about these experiences that our souls
Mm-hmm.
will bring us into to help us come to this higher level of self. Because I think, like, knowing both of you in all of our situations, I think that we all have experienced things to bring us to this point to guide others, right? And I think when I've talked to other people about the dark night of the soul, or like their experience of it, it's like once they got there, there was some sort of situation they were breaking through that was confining them. And see,
100,
right? And it was like, and Brian, you talk
100%.
about that crisis. Like,
Yeah.
okay, like, I remember for me, like, the dark night of the soul was when, like, I was getting roasted in divorce court.
mm.
Roasted. Like I was at that point, I think I was up to $12,000 in debt, like, and it was nowhere near done. And I'm like, I don't want to be here. And I think there was this fantasy, like, and I appreciate seeing when you said that, there was this fantasy of like, well, maybe it's best I'm not. Like,
Yeah.
well, what would that be like? Or like,
Yeah.
and I had to go through this thing of, all right, there's something new that's there. That's like this, my way of thinking, this conditional love. There's something else there, right? And this is where I think it's important. Like, man, I'm so, my mind is it's going so many places. Uh, I think that's the scary piece because what's on the other side. So I'm curious for you to, what was let's speak to the people going through some shit right now, right? That are in that process of like, this situation I'm in is no bueno. Thank you, Duolingo.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
I would like to speak to this a little bit because I've had a visualization that's come through a couple times for clients recently where we will have them sort of be in their today old self. I call it the today old self, and then travel back in time to themselves as a child or another age, and then travel back in time to their space and time of birth, and then back in time to when they were in the womb, and then back to when they were just a collection of cells that were becoming human, back to when they were an idea, and then back
Mm,
beyond that. Where were you before that? You were an energy. You were one with the stars. You were one with all that is. You can't. And what is your origin? The source of all that is, whatever you believe that to be. For many people, that's God, and for whatever it is, right? And so taking people back through their stages of development to their origin source. And energetically, it's like everything is energy. Everything in this universe is energy. All we are is this vibration of atoms. It's the truth of who we are. And at some
all
point, that's
vibration.
all we were. At some point,
Right.
that's all we were, coming from oneness with all that is, one with the source of all that is, right? And so, like, letting them sort of sit there and take that in, real like, yeah, that's the truth of who I am. I didn't just poof appear here, right?
Right.
And then having them go back down in and be like, all right, you're one with all it is, including the highest level of all that is, creator of all that is. At some point, you became an idea, and then you became these cells that replicated and formed a being, and then you were born into a container through a mother, not from a mother, through a mother,
Mm-hmm.
and into a container that had genetic material, and a container that immediately began to condition you to a culture, a religion, a paradigm, familial values, the emotional experiences and regulation of an adult. And the conditioning begins right away. But the
Mm-hmm.
conditioning kind of existed in the container, right? And so when you emerge from that with that kind of awareness, you can go, what's real? Like,
Right.
who am I truly? I exist in this body that by the time I'm 8 has a paradigm and a conditioning. And it's also a nervous system that's designed to keep us safe. It's for survival. And
Yes.
the nervous system does not like the unknown. So
Mm.
when you arrive at a place where you have a realization that maybe things aren't true, or to Brian's point, like you've hit an impasse where you can no longer continue and be in line with with your beingness.
Right.
It's scary as hell because we don't know what the other side looks like, and we're in this body that has a protective nervous system that's going to say that's not safe.
Right.
So we hit this fear point where our body's saying no, but our soul is saying you have to because it's for your highest good. And if
Right.
you don't have spiritual practices in place, or a connection to a higher power, or a support team, that's a scary place to be. But there are a lot of tools, and you can develop a team, and you can develop practices where you can step outside that fear and outside that paradigm, and move into deeper meaning and move into greater love, or beyond the conditioned self, into more truth. But
Right.
it is not easy, and part of the reason it's not easy is because this body of ours is trying its best to keep us safe. It's
Mm.
loving us the best that it can and saying, don't go there, it's scary, it's the unknown,
Right.
right? But
Right.
that's really the best thing for us, right? So
Mm.
having this understanding of like who we truly are in our essence, and how this human body works, and knowing how to navigate the two. So
Right.
like, my Instagram name is Sacredly Human. It's like we're all sacred essence energy, and we're all a human being in a body with a nervous system. We have to learn how to navigate both. How do you meet the human in you, your 9-year-old, with the love and compassion of the wisest, most loving version of you, or the most intuitive version of you? That's the journey, right? Live as much as you can in your essence and understand when you hit the paradigm, and then have the tools to be able to navigate it so that you can keep expanding,
Mm,
you know?
mm.
And how quickly can we get people to that place, that process where life is that practice?
I mean, man, there's so much there, CA. Because I think it starts. You start. A person can start practicing it before they get to that space, right? Because and this is, you
Yeah.
both, you said something that comes back to something I heard Brian say before when he was in the Czech Institute about, like, hey, find out what religion this person is before you
Yeah.
ask about their back problem, because that's
Yeah.
like the container, right?
Yeah.
What's the container that they're in? Um, it's interesting because I wanted to check in with you too on just like your take on that just being able to maneuver through that container, because for you, man, what I heard you say, your container was that group, right? That guy was just like, yo, man, yo, we're gonna do this, yo, we're gonna hook it up. But like, what was it for you that got you to move into it? Because I heard the prep, I heard like the support, but like for you, like looking back on it now, what do you think was that part of you that was like, nah, we're going into this, man?
Yeah, I always been a big believer in reincarnation. I always been a big believer if you need to address your issues that you have head on.
Yeah.
And if you don't in the next life, it's going to come back harder. So
Damn right.
until you learn your lesson. So I was like, you know what? Let's white knuckle this bitch and let's go. Let's go in, man.
Let's go. Let's
Yeah.
go.
I
So
love that concept of reincarnation too. It really makes a lot of things make sense. And I was raised Catholic. I mean, I'm not practicing Catholic at all. I don't practice any religion. I have a personal relationship with God, a very deep spiritual personal relationship with the God of my understanding. But reincarnation just makes a lot of stuff make sense. And I don't
yeah.
know if you've ever heard that concept of the cosmic bus stop. I wish I could remember
No.
which do you have you read it? No, it's if there's a book and I can't remember the name of the book, but this woman talks about how, you know, if for those that don't know, like reincarnation, it's like we come here with a purpose. We're here with lessons we need to learn so that this
Mhm.
soul can evolve and raise vibration and become one with source, whatever.
Mhm.
So she says, like, at the end of life, you have this reflection period on the life that you just, lives that you had, and you know what you have to work on in the next space. So she paints this picture that we're hanging out in this cosmic bus stop, knowing what our mission is, and we're talking to people at the bus stop and going, yeah, man, I gotta work on forgiveness in this lifetime or whatever. And someone goes, hey, I can help you with that. I'll go down and fill this role for you. And you're like, really? You'll do that? And so we jump in with
Mhm.
these purpose and these people that are supposed to fill roles for us. And I think that's so cool. Like, I think our subconscious mind really likes stories. It likes stories and images and things we can feel. So this idea that, like, hey, this is happening for me and I chose this, is huge. I had this come up for a client recently where she was really struggling with someone that had wronged her in the past. And they showed the cosmic bus stop to her. And they showed like everybody choosing their roles. And they showed this person that had really wronged her going, oh man, I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to do this down there for you. But you chose this, right? Like, you want me to play this role? And she's like, yeah, I want you to play this role. He's like, I'm really sorry. I'm going down. And it totally changed the way she saw him. She saw him as an actor playing a role in a story that she was the writer of on some level.
Right.
And it changed the victimhood aspect of it, right? So it's like whatever you need to be able to have an understanding of what we're doing here in this plane. And I think having an understanding that life is happening kind of for you, not to you, for
Mm.
you and through you, is really empowering for me. For me, not everybody, will agree with that, but
Yeah.
This is a very important piece, because this is a really important piece to healing, to recognize that whatever the wrong was or whatever the scenario was, there was a lesson and a level up in that experience. Like, it
right,
took me years to be able to embrace this, that the situations that I've had with the mothers of my children, like, they've played a role in like me going to a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
Like once someone brought that to me, I was like, man, F you, man. You don't know what you're talking about. You haven't met him. You haven't I'm like, yo, I'm just like, listen, once I got to embrace that, I was like, oh, Junk, yes, I get that now because it got me as soon as I let go of the wheels, right?
Yeah.
It was like, okay, it was starting to show me very much like the cosmic bus stop. Like, hey, listen, that was the role that they played. So you get here. They
Yeah.
had this happen so you could do this. And I'm like, oh, shoot. So almost, I'm at the point now, once I embrace that, I'm thanking them.
Yeah.
I
That's
never thought I'd thank the mothers of my children for the experiences that they put me through. And I'm just like, bless up to you. Thank you very much.
right.
You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah, and isn't it? It's the ego that labels it as good or bad, right? When in reality, it's just all part of the experience to move you through the journey, right? And so it's releasing those labels of good and bad and understanding it's all for the highest good. It's hard as hell when
right.
you're going through it. But when you can look in the rear view mirror and see when those things have made sense to you, you can kind of stand here and go, wonder how this is going to play out, right? It's
Yeah.
hard,
Right.
but you can do it, right?
Let's transition to because we talked a lot about the difficulty of the process, right? And how scary it can be. And we
Mm.
also touched on what's on the other side, this unconditional love, this vibrancy of life and of spirit. And I'd like for us to connect to and see, you touched on this. What are the steps that people can take when they get to that dark night of the soul or when they're experiencing difficult experiences?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious for you to like, and all of us, like, sure, I'm gonna get up in this too.
Yeah.
Um, like, what would you say are the tools or resources that can support a person as they move through this transition of their spirit and soul?
Mm-hmm.
B, I'm gonna
Yeah.
have you go first on this
Yeah.
one.
You go
Yeah.
first.
Like,
That's helpful.
I really believe your thoughts create your reality. I mean, it's airy fairy. First thing I would do is visualize, start getting into a visualization practice.
Yeah,
Think about what your end result is and how you, not even how you're going to get out of it. Don't worry about all the hows. Just picture yourself on the other end being what you want to be. Like we talked about this every morning. I wake up early. I do like 15, 20 minutes of meditation, visualization, and I purposely plan out my life as best I can with the visualization. So with that visualization, I have to cultivate gratitude. I have to cultivate positive things in my life, give my thanks, and just focus on the end result of how I'm going to be. I think visualization is a pretty big tool for most
huge,
people to use.
huge.
And I think if you get that down, you have a good start. You have a good start to it.
B, you bring a great point because I'm thinking back when I was in my situation. If I had had a visualization practice, I think it would have made the experience a lot easier
Yeah.
because I would have had in my mind like where I'm going, where I'm like my intention is going forward. So that's huge. That's
Yeah.
huge. Thank you for that, man. Great stuff, man. Yes. See, you got one?
Well, I'm thinking when I went through my first Dark Night of the Soul was in 2006. I had no practices in place. I didn't do yoga. I didn't meditate. I never would have because I would have been a person that thought all that stuff was ridiculous, right? I was very science brained and there's no way I would have done that. So I had nothing. But what I did do, which I highly recommend now, is I created a new life, right? Where I tried new things. I met new people. I started selling jewelry. Like I was a physical therapist and I started selling jewelry and I showed up in spaces where nobody knew me. So nobody had an expectation of who I was or, how I did things. And I showed up in new spaces where I got to practice being the me that I wanted to be without anyone knowing. And that's really important. So like I agree now on the visualization thing, but at the end of the day, you have to get up out of that off of that mat and go be that person and go do those things, right? How can you jump? You can visualize it, but can you step across the line into the new space of beingness, right? And so the one thing that I did right away after that dark night of the soul is I quit my job, I sold my house, and I started doing something completely different. And that was one of the biggest things was that nobody knew me there and I could be someone completely different because it's all about who you're being,
Right.
right? So even now, like going through this one is different because now I have meditation practice and whatnot. And I would agree wholeheartedly that gratitude is essential. You have to find a way to fall in love with your life right now. You have to, because you cannot create abundance or something new from a space of lack. And so if your life right now isn't enough, you're not going to be able to shift to the other space. So really getting grateful for the little things, right? But again, coming into space where can I be where I get to practice being this new version of self or this version of me that I'm trying to become? Can I get into new circles where people are doing the thing that I want to do, or where people are reflecting the values that I want to have, and then show up and practice being that me? Because otherwise you stay in the paradigm. You stay in your old patterns unless you push yourself into new places where you get to practice being someone different. So gratitude, meditation, I think is essential for sure. But for me, it's like, who are you going to be on the other side of that awareness? And what are you doing as that person? That's where that integration into embodiment comes from. And once you start practice being that person, it becomes natural. And then you're free of the pattern, right? Or if it shows up again, you have enough distance from it that you can be the observer of it and go, oh, this is showing up in a new way. That's like, what we talked about when we talked with the master. How am I going to navigate this? But you're like, deeply embodied where you have a different sense about it. It doesn't suck you in maybe as strongly,
I
Yes,
love that.
yes.
I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead, B.
No, no, I was just complimenting her. I like that.
Yeah,
Thank
this
you.
so what I'm hearing is really stepping into something different, stepping into the newness, really
Yeah.
and being and I'm also hearing in what you're saying, there's courage in that to
Oh yeah,
Big
be
time.
able to
big time.
set everything aside
Yeah.
and step into something that's completely different. So it's almost like a be do, and then like you'll have something different.
Yeah.
I also appreciate something that you helped me remember something Brian said, which was important about the gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in any difficult space, I'm realizing now is to be grateful for the space.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and really, I'm finding like, I'm finding really settle into what about this would make me grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Like instead of being like, oh, I'm grateful for this. Like I noticed in my journal, when I started doing this gratitude, I was like, I'm grateful for, I'm grateful for. Then I went into, I'm grateful for this because blah, blah, blah.
Because, yeah.
Because this. And then like all of a sudden I'm like, oh yeah, damn.
Yeah.
Like sometimes like my job annoys the shit out of me. And it's like, I'm grateful because, all right, I'm grateful because my kids have steady money coming in. I'm grateful because I have health insurance because I'm getting older. I want to make sure I get my test. I'm grateful for this because you know what? It's good. It gives me comfort to know every couple weeks, like this is coming in. So I know this is covered and it gives me the leeway to do what I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
So it started to change the dynamic. So I appreciate what you said about that, both of you.
Yeah.
Also, the meditation piece I think is huge. And I'm curious though, when you talk about meditation, is it because I'm learning to step outside of my box about like, hey, well, I'm familiar with this, so everybody's supposed to know how to meditate. But
Mm-hmm.
like when you talk meditation, how would you describe it in this scenario?
Yeah. Uh, for me,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
sitting,
for all of us. I'm
sitting
like,
with yourself in non-judgment, sitting with your human as your sacred aspect, being the observer of your human.
right,
So if I'm in the space of being the observer and I can observe the sensations in my body, the thoughts I'm having, the judgments I'm having about the thoughts and sensations in my body, the thoughts about past and present, and I'm in that observer space, that means I'm in the higher mind.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
if I can be the observer of myself, that means I'm out. So the practice is, how can I sit in non-judgment and just allow what is to be? Right.
Mm,
And that's getting out of that space of labeling it as good or bad or assigning a meaning to it or, letting it take me down a path of stories that may or may not ever come true. It's
right,
like, for me, meditation is just sitting in the space of being with what is. It's more mindfulness based than drifting off into space based. Right.
right,
And just being okay with what is. And what that does, and we know this, scientifically, is it develops our brain's capacity to be able to be with what is throughout the day, without getting pulled, into it. So that's what meditation is for me. So many people say, oh, I can't meditate, I can't quiet my mind. I'm like, yeah, because you're human and you're not supposed to be. But can you sit with yourself even when it's uncomfortable? Can you sit with yourself and not judge yourself for that? Right? Can you maybe, even if not, can you refocus and bring yourself back to the present moment? Right? It's like, that is to me, that's a skill that I personally don't think you can get to a place of personal transformation without having meditation practice. Because if you can't be the observer of yourself, if you haven't practiced being the observer of yourself, you're not going to catch those habits and those patterns. You're just not.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know
Man, so yes, I agree with that. Like I like to say sitting with self.
yeah
Like,
yeah
and you bring up something that I want to offer to people that are going through this, and it starts off with non-judgment, like having non-judgmental spaces for yourself.
yeah
Before you even going through it, like, CA, you brought up about the non-judgmental space in meditation, and also it's non-judgmental spaces in life. So people that that you can talk to about what you're experiencing, that are going to be feeling like you're a crazy mother hoo-ha, like, what are you talking about, man? Like, get over it, man. Go, let's go have a Heineken. I
right
got some great sativa. Like, yo, call up that chickadee you were talking to. Like, no, like, talk to like you like chickadee, but like, I think it's very important because and I'm trying to remember the article, but our a concern right now in our society is loneliness.
yeah
People put on a mask and think, hey, yeah, everything is great, and they go home and they're struggling, and they have yet to find spaces that they can truly be themselves. Like, this one of the, I think that's one of the actually, I know that's one of the reasons me and B are so tight. And also same thing with UCA, because like, I know if I'm coming to you all with stuff, like, I remember Brian was helping me out with Juice Dreams. I was just like, I don't want to tell this dude about my finances, but like, I'm like, I was able to talk to him, and it was not like, Paul, you're an idiot. It was just like, all right, listen, well, hey, Paul, man, you gotta start looking at this, and this. Like, and also, like, even with CA, when I would come to you like with the divorce situation, like, I would talk to my friends about it. They were like, go get like, talk to me about all these destructive vices. Whereas you were able to talk to me, and you could listen and then be like, hey, Paul, man, have you thought about this? Like, maybe like, so I think for people that are experiencing these difficult situations, please, 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 or even if you have yet to experience them, please start looking at what's the judgmental space that you have in your life, where you can express what's happening for you, and you
mm-hmm.
have a tight crew, whether it's your own self to be like the observer, like, okay, or
Mm-hmm.
you have your tools. Like, I'm a big fan of parts work, like,
Mm-hmm.
internal family systems. I'm a big fan of that, shamanism, journey, and like, Reiki and myself, giving the good goody goods. But like, find that space for yourself, because I find that it's like, to practice something in crisis makes it even more difficult. To practice things when there's no crisis is the most opportune time, because when that crisis hits, you can like, oh, mama say, mama sama makusa, yo, help me. Like, you can go right in. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I
I
think it's
think you
important.
raised a great point there, because a lot of people will meditate as a stress release tool, and it is beneficial for that. Breath work, meditation is something that calms us, but then that's no different than having a drink, or, I mean, it's a little different, right? But it is something also that's just meeting us in crisis mode. Whereas if you do it every day, who you are through the crisis is different, right? And I think that are a lot of people that are meditating almost like, instead of taking a Valium, instead of meditating so that they can float through that in a space of non-judgment and acceptance.
Yes.
you know i
Yes.
i like, just going back to what we were talking about, gratitude. One of the things I teach my clients and is this concept of beauty hunting, where you go throughout your day and you look for things that are beautiful, you look for things that are amazing, whether that's you're looking at the sky, or you're like, you're great, you're looking at the fact that you got a good parking spot, or that those kids are playing, or that elderly couple is holding hands. Things that are beautiful. I like to look for things in nature, because it gives us the opportunity to, no matter what's going on with your life, to see beauty, because we can hold both. Like, you could be going through the worst thing in the world and step outside and see the clouds on a blue sky that are absolutely amazing. And one of the things we need to learn to do, you talked about polarization, Brian, it's like, it's not an either or. You can be going through shit and feeling this way and also be so grateful that you get to see that the sky looks that way today. We can hold both. We can see beauty and be grieving. We can see that, right? And what I also like about that is this concept of our oneness with the divine is looking at that beauty and saying, the same energy that made that made me. And I am every bit as miraculous and I am every bit as beautiful, but I'm also part of this seasons of life. Everything in this whole universe has seasons, yet we expect that we're supposed to be good all the time. And so when you go outside in nature and connect, it's like a reminder. I was made by the same energy, with the same flow of seasons, with the same, transient essence. And it's okay for me to be feeling how I feel, but I'm also that. Right. And that's the practice of being non-judgment and being accepting as well, but also connecting to the truth of our essence and going back to that love energy.
Yeah. Oh man.
Love it.
Oh yeah. I love that. You know what I'm hearing in that is that things are more than black and white.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
It's title for a podcast.
That's how it ends.
Right.
That's how it ends. Oh, when can we talk again?
Yeah.
Yes. Listen. So yeah, and I think like there's, I think there's going to be great feedback on this episode, and I think once we get the once we put this out, I do want to have another time to have another conversation with you specifically, CA, because I just taking some notes. There's so many nuggets and gems that we could really dive into, and that's the thing for Brian and I, man, as we're going through this. Like, our intention here is to bring people resources so that they can move through life, through like to be the healthiest version of themselves, to be the best version of themselves. And a lot of it is more than the traditional tools that you see out there. There's layers to this. Even like you mentioned meditation, people are like, go meditate, but it's like, hold up, man, what does that mean though, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like B and I, we talk about this. Like, hold up, what? Pause.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
So
I love that you're doing this too, because we need spaces where we feel like we're not the only one. We need spaces where go, oh, I thought I was the only one that thought that way. And we know that we're validated. And if you don't, not everybody has those safe spaces in their families. Like you said, people will tell you you're crazy for thinking that, or they give you advice from their conditioning, which isn't helpful, right? So to be able to have spaces like this where you're having conversations that make people feel like they're not alone, or that make people feel like they're normal, is really important first space to start. So it's a beautiful thing, that you do this for people. I used to love reading spiritual memoirs in the beginning, because they all tell the same story. They just have a different plot, but they all arrive at the same place. And you go, wow, we really are all the same. There's so many of us on this journey. It's a beautiful thing. So thank you for doing what you do, because just listening to this for somebody will be healing and expansive.
Yeah, bless up, man. And thank you to Brian for being like, hey, Paul, I got an idea. I was
Yeah,
like,
thank you, Brian.
so listen, before we wrap up, any last words, like for like anything that maybe you wanted to say that because I know CA, your original intention was like for people to get to their highest good, and forget our programming, Brian, was what you said. So align with what your original intention is. There anything that you want to say before we start wrapping up? Any last words?
I would just say that everyone, this is what I've learned over these years, because even coming to the energy work, I would have thought it was crazy. It was a miracle. A miracle happened. A man with facial paralysis, his eyes open. I didn't even know what Reiki was or energy healing was. Everything that we need is already inside of us. Like, we're born with everything that we need, including an infinite capacity to heal, intuition, the ability to create whatever it is that we desire. We truly are, every single one of us. Like, we're not special. I mean, we're all special, but every single person has access to this, has this in them. We just haven't been taught that. We haven't been taught that, right? And so I just would like to say to people, if you're struggling, just know that there is a beauty and a power and a limitless infinite potential in you that you can't even imagine, but people know that it's true. Find them. because it will help you find that place in yourself. That's my most favorite thing to do, is to help people find that place in themselves. Right.
So thank you, CA. Thank you for being a guest. Thank you for everything that you do. Man, what? Tip top. And B, I think before I heard you say like you were good, but did anything else want to check in? Anything else you want to?
Yeah, Caroline said before, like being courageous is a big part about it. You know, to getting to breaking everything down. I would say every day try to do something that's going to make yourself feel a little uneasy, take yourself out of the comfort zone, little by little. It doesn't have to be like all like a all in one shot, but slowly start breaking it down. Then you're going to realize, oh, it's not that scary after all. Keep breaking it down little by little, little by little. You know, that'd be my advice.
Yeah. I have this thing I share with my clients and my kids. My son uses it. What would you do if you weren't afraid? So when you identify the fear is there, what would you do if you weren't afraid? And you usually have an image or an idea right away. You know what it is, right? Do that, or at least take a step in that direction.
Ooh, wee. You know what? And yeah, I love it. I love it. And my last words would be like, take a look at this video that's somewhere on this thing about visualization, because B and I did a recording on this. And there's gems in here. Go back. Maybe if you watched this or heard this and you failed to have a notebook handy, go back. Listen to it. Right, take some notes. And listen, get in contact. You know our contact information. CA, drop the goodies. How do people get in contact with you, my friend?
You can go to carolanpatterson.com. I have a in-person practice in Cranford, New Jersey, and also an office in Chatham, New Jersey. And I do work online, sessions and mentorship and whatever. But yeah, you can reach out to me there. Thank you.
Bless up. Bless up.
And that is Carolan with an E, Carolanne, Patterson with 2 T's. So
good call. Thank you. Because people are like, oh,
yeah, right.
So listen, thank you, everybody that's watching. We appreciate you. Keep subscribing, keep leaving comments, because listen, that's the fuel for B and I. We love reading your comments. We love getting your feedback. It helps us be better so we can be better for you. So thank you, everyone. This is More Than Black or White, and we're out of here. Peace.
Thank you so much. Have a good night. Bye.